Welcome to Invest in Yourself, the Digital Entrepreneur Podcast. Join the Podcast Mogul Phil Better as he interviews successful entrepreneurs that make their living in the digital world. Now, let's join your host, Phil Better, and his special guest today on Invest in Yourself, the Digital Entrepreneur Podcast.
Another enlightening episode of Invest in Yourself, the Digital Entrepreneur Podcast. I am, of course, the host, Phil Better, the Podcast Mogul, and today we have an exceptional guest whose work has been quietly but profoundly transforming the lives of business owners across the world. Imagine running a successful business while having the freedom to spend quality time with your family and focus on what really, truly matters. Our guest has mastered this balance and is on a mission to help others do the same. With a career spanning over 13 years in the outsourcing industry, he hired his first VA, virtual assistant back in November of 2008, like it was nothing, and has had one every day since. His company, Level 9 Virtual, is dedicated to creating freedom for business owners by providing top-notch virtual assistant services. He prides himself on staying out of the limelight, preferring his VAs to shine while he focuses on delivering exceptional value to his clients. His approach isn't just about outsourcing tasks, it's about changing lives and giving business owners the leverage they need to thrive. Listeners, prepare to be inspired by the insightful strategies that have revolutionized how entrepreneurs manage their time and grow their business. It's with great pleasure and a great excitement I welcome Joe Rare. Joe, welcome to the show.
Thank you. I appreciate you having me.
I'm excited to talk with you because I've had a few people on who talk about hiring VAs. None of them really have a company that's dedicated strictly to pretty much hiring VAs for people, for business owners and companies and all that. And I'm very excited because I know this is going to help a lot of my audience because everybody should hire a VA at a certain point. So I'm glad we have you here on the podcast.
Definitely. Yeah, I'm here to help. So,
all right.
Far away.
So from my intro, we know you in November of 2008, you hired your first VA. Now, was that your first introduction into the entrepreneurial world, or had you started a business beforehand?
No, I'd already owned a business. So I started by launching a door-to-door sales business. So very, very different. It was very much, kind of belly-to-belly sales. We had a lot of staff internal. I grew up from 2 to 40 employees, I think, in about 24, 27 months, and then sold the company. And so it was pretty early on. I think I was only 22 years old when I sold the business, and that was my first business that I actually launched. And so kind of a minor home run. It was kind of an in the park home run. It wasn't the greatest sale, of course, because I didn't know what I was doing. But nonetheless, I mean, it was really my first opportunity to exit and go do something else. And so that was pretty fun.
What made you decide to start like a door-to-door? Sorry, like belly-to-belly salesman. No,
yeah,
a door. Why did you want to do door-to-door? Like, what inspired you to become that entrepreneur? Like, start that business in the first place?
Well, the first thing that I was looking for was to kind of go back. It was really all about building a business and trying to figure out how to get into business. I didn't know what I wanted to do. I didn't know what I didn't know. I also didn't have much experience. I didn't have any sales experience, and sales experience was going to be unbelievably important if I was going to build companies in the long haul. And my vision was always to own businesses, but sales was going to be the most important thing. So I actually was looking technically for a job in sales, and an opportunity opened up where I could actually take over and run an office and actually have my own business within kind of this ecosystem that was created. And so really what the relationship created was the opportunity for me to get the manufacturer to consign products that we then sold and then paid for, basically like net 30. And so that was kind of my entry into it. I was trying to learn sales. And so I had the opportunity. I went up to Seattle. I was raised in, Northern California, had lived all over, but I ended up dropping out of school to start this business. And I went to Seattle and I worked in the rain every single day, walking into businesses door to door, selling things that were literally in my hands physically, selling them to the people in the business and just saying, and it's basically like a trunk full of stuff. And it was pretty ghetto. And, there's nothing like being rejected to your face 100 times a day for months and months 6 days a week. Like we work 6 days a week. And that rejection and that ability to overcome those objections and to kind of like really brush things off and overcome bad days and all those things, it was interesting to say the least, but it was probably one of the most valuable trainings I ever put myself through, which led to then me saying, well, hey, I'm going to take this team of people that I had trained and built up as a team, and we're all going to go open an office. And that became my first business after I dropped out of college.
And then fast forward, you end up selling it to, and then now is Virtual 9 your second business, the second attempt, or was Virtual 9?
Oh, no, this is way down the
line. I figured as much.
But there was a lot between there. So I sold that company, took the proceeds, which were not as much as they should have been. I took those proceeds and I started investing in real estate. And so that was kind of the 04, 05 era. And I started investing and buying properties, and I kind of stumbled onto a way that I could create more leverage faster. And so we bought and we flipped these properties that were basically in construction. They were brand new properties. And what we would do is go into a development community where they were building whole neighborhoods, and we would put down a deposit on a property. And then by the time it was finished, we just put a sign in the yard and sold it before we even ever closed on it. And so we just continued to flip. And then I realized that none of these builders had any way to communicate with each other. So I could just do it with 4, 5, 6 different communities all at the exact same time. And the only cost to me was to put down the deposit on the house, which back then, I mean, it's essentially like 10%, right? So it could be, at the time it was like $3,000 per property, maybe. Excuse me, it was 1%. So it was $3,000 per property was all I had to put down. So we were doing that over and over, and I realized like I could do it like 5 or 6 times at one time. And so then I took all the proceeds because, by the time the property was built, it had grown in value. And, I'd take that net and then I would roll it into the next deal. And then that took me into buying fix and flips and stuff like that. And then, of course, 2008 and 2009 happens, the market crashes, and I'm stuck with all of these properties that I had bought to fix and flip. And they were all in rehab at the exact same time. And I just watched the value of the properties decline. And so we were losing equity like crazy. So I did this huge fire sale and basically took all the money that I had made and lost all of it in real estate. And so that was an awesome time.
But it taught you a lot because it taught you a lot because one, the real estate business is obviously a very different business than other entrepreneurial ventures. However, there's a lot of similarities. And that also taught you not to put all your eggs in one basket as well, I bet.
Well, it was, just actually like running a business, right? If your intent is to build the business to exit, okay, that's one avenue. But if you do everything in your power just for that end capital gain at the end of it, you're going to miss all the benefit on the inside. And there's tons of cash flow benefit on the inside. There's lots of tax benefits. Same thing with real estate. I was young and I was watching kind of this like hot and heavy market, and everybody was kind of doing the same thing. People were fix and flipping and what I wasn't doing was building wealth. I was basically a transactional guy, right? I was doing sales, and that's really all it was these transactional sales where I would go in and I would buy a property, then I would flip it. But there was no, I wasn't building anything. All I was doing was transacting things. And so later, when it's like you lose everything, you go, how could I have done that different? And I should have invested for cash flow. I should have invested for the long-term wealth. If you look at people who are very wealthy, they don't really sell their assets. They hold on to things. The only thing that they would do is they would move their wealth from one asset to a bigger one. And so I looked at it and went, man, I just did it wrong. I just did it wrong. So then the next time when I had the opportunity to go invest in real estate, and now we do it a lot, that it became, okay, this is a cash flow investment. I'm not looking for that quick, burst of cash because I have businesses that do that. So now we're building wealth for the long haul. It's for my kids.
I like that. I like how you took the loss, the big L, if you will, because it is an L. and then turned it into a W because you're like, okay, I learned from this. I still want to be in this game. I realize that it's long-term, not short-term. Businesses are short-term. Real estate is long-term, which is great. And then so in 2008, I take it that's when well, obviously you hired your first VA. What was the task that you had that VA doing?
Well, I just got my ass kicked in real estate. And so I said, all right, it's time to do something else. And at that time, a buddy sees me kind of down and out, and he hands me the book, The 4-Hour Workweek. And it was really like I doing real estate. It's like, yeah, you use the internet back in, 08, but I wasn't like in it. Like my business wasn't online. And I really took that and realized, okay, this is the future, right? It's building online companies. And so I sat down, or actually I did something a little different. So I read the book cover to cover, went, okay, this is fascinating. I'm going to do this. I'm going to build one of these. And so then I said, but I'm not going to do it where I was living in Northern California. I'm going to move to the beach. And so I decided to take the last of my money, move to San Diego, and at my kitchen table every single day, I built a business page by page out of the 4-Hour Workweek. And so I built an e-commerce business. The first set of tasks that my VA was doing was research. It was admin tasks. It was helping me with little website edits. It was all these little things that I had to do to launch this business. The VA was doing all of that. And it took me, I think, 14 VAs to find the right one. It was awful. And I'm like, this doesn't work. Like, I can't even hire anybody. And it was like, one thing after another, and it was different countries, and I was trying kind of everything. And so that was kind of my introduction, and how I got started using virtual assistants was due to, the 4-Hour Workweek mentions hire a virtual assistant. And I was like, all right, well, shit, that's in the book, and I'm going to do this by the book. So I'm going to do it. And then, so, I hired my first, and I mean, I've had a team working with me literally every day since November of 2008. I wish I could find the time. Like, I wish I could, and I know I have it somewhere. There's an email somewhere where I purchased, and my first virtual assistant service. I want to find what day of the week that, what day of the month that was, because that would be pretty cool to have.
Yeah, that would be insane to still have that, but still knowing that it's around November, is even better. And it took you 14 or 18 virtual assistants?
14. Yeah, I hired 14 different ones to find somebody who fit probably my personality, like how I work. I was, the first 4 or 5 were all from like a company. Mm-hmm. And that company was kind of a pain in the ass, because it's like, hey, this is your VA. But then really what they were doing, that was my point of contact. And then he was farming it to people behind him. And then they were all doing it, but then it would come back to me, and I'm like, why is this different than the last time? And it just wasn't really working the way that I thought it should have. And so I decided, I'm like, okay, that doesn't work. And so then I started trying to hire direct. And this is, the days before Upwork and all that stuff. So it was a lot more challenging, but yep, 14 of them.
But at least finally you persevered, you got it to work. You got your e-commerce building up.
Yep.
Boom, boom. Now we're at level 9. And
not even close. I didn't even get, I still haven't gotten to level 9 yet. I had this e-commerce business. This thing's going great. I'm crushing it. I'm living this free life. I'm hanging out in Costa Rica with friends. I'm surfing every day. Then I moved. I decided I want to go live in the snow. So I moved to Colorado, and I'm snowboarding and doing that whole thing. And then I ended up coming back to Northern California, which then I meet my wife, and decided, all right, I guess we're going to move here, stay here. And that business is still running, and it's still going well. And then the FDA decided that the health supplement that I was selling, that they didn't want anybody to sell it anymore. And so they shut it down. And in an instant, they basically made so payment processing companies could not process payments for that particular product. And so my business basically closed in a day. And so now I go from like, things are great, to zero. And
another 2008, 2009 situation.
And so another crash. And so then it was like, all right, well, what am I going to do? That one hit hard. I was kind of like, shoot, like, I really don't know what to do next. Like, I had to build another e-commerce business. Like, Amazon's huge, e-commerce is everywhere. What am I like? It was so much more challenging to go from zero, because there was so much competition. And I had product on shelves in stores, and like we had all like this whole distribution. It was great. And so somebody then asked me, hey, how are you able to get people in front of your product and get people to buy your product and all that thing? And I was like, oh, well, I'm kind of decent at marketing. And then it clicked and I'm like, I could do marketing. So I started doing marketing consulting. Then I landed a gig with Keller Williams in Austin, Texas. And so I got to do some big stuff with them. That paid some decent bills for a while. And then I decided, well, I should open an agency. And I still had VAs working with me the whole time. But for some reason, I don't know if I was listening to a whole bunch of Gary Vee or what I was doing, but I opened an agency. So I opened an office. We had super high overhead, all these US employees, people sitting at desks, people with computers and ergonomic chairs and all this expensive crap. And so then that business is going pretty decent for a couple of years until we lost the two biggest clients we had, which was about 40% of all of the revenue of the company in two clients, which is never a good thing. Lost both of them in about a 2.5 week period of time. So definitely not good. And so then that caused this long trickle down effect of the business going under. And I ended up closing down the business, got rid of all the employees. And I'm like, what am I doing with a whole bunch of employees, but I'm the outsource guy? Like, I still had like 18 VAs, but we also had 27 people in the US sitting in chairs. And so that was a bad, an unfortunate situation. And so closed that business down, started from zero again with I had one client that I kept. And that was, then I basically relaunched a marketing agency, but I picked one niche, one service, and just did that. And it was the wedding industry. And so I worked directly with wedding venues in an agency. I still own the agency today. It still has hundreds of clients. And that was the thing that really catapulted my model and how we created leverage. And so I went from one client paying me like $2,000 a month to $109,000 a month in 4 months. And so and it was with basically one VA prospecting and then a team of 3 that were all fulfillment. And that was the entire business. And we ran that. And then I went, hold on, I could do the same thing with Level 9 Virtual. And so in the midst of all that, I kind of started offering VA services to clients as a way to make extra money and support them. So that's how Level 9 actually started. It was kind of like just a side thing. Yeah, it was a side thing. It's like, hey, I know how to get VAs. People keep asking me for VAs. Let me just help them. And then they'll just pay me a little bit. And then I realized that after we really blew up the agency, I was like, I could do this with the VA company. And then that one eclipsed everything else I was doing. So long story longer.
Long story longer, but it's great because it shows that entrepreneurial, you can have a home run like you did with your first hit, right? Your first venture right off the gate, huge explosion. You made money. You are obviously looking back, you're like, I could have made more, but hindsight's 2020. You went into real estate, took a big L in real estate, but learned from that for your second stint at real estate and turned it into a W. You took multiple L's in business, but it isn't L's. They're lessons. That's how I look at it. I don't look at losses.
Well, yeah, that's what the L is. The L is a lesson. It's for sure.
It's you don't fail at something. It's your first attempt at learning, and you learned a lot to now jump into your wedding agency. Now you have your Level 9 Virtual, which is kicking ass. Your real estate's kicking ass, and you've probably set up for those situations when the end comes or the inevitable change, which you seem to attract, if you will, in different markets.
I definitely used to.
Yeah, now it doesn't seem to because everybody's looking for those VAs. But with hiring VAs, obviously it's you went through a majority. You're going through them like crazy when you first started, the 14 at the beginning. Now you have a team working with you. What is the best quality, if you will, or one of the major qualities we should look for in a VA?
Well, I think it depends what you need. So I actually just did an outsourced mastery coaching session with a bunch of clients and so forth. And one of the areas we were really focusing on is understanding who you're trying to attract and what you're trying to attract them for. The challenge that most people end up having when they outsource is that they don't have a clear path to keep that person working with them for the long haul. Most of the time when somebody thinks virtual assistant, this is just something that people do naturally, they anticipate lower skill. There's going to be the language barrier, which is going to be a little bit of an issue if you're outsourcing overseas. the language barrier is going to be a little bit of a challenge, which automatically brings people down slightly and things like, okay, it's a little lower skill level. Because they're also going to be paying less than you would pay somebody local. That also in your mind will say, oh, this is lower skill. But like on my team, like my lead developer is a college professor. Like I'm a college dropout. He's a professor. And he's been with me for, 6-7 years. He's been with me for a long time. But what I had when I went to hire him was, instead of doing what everybody else does, which is they make the hiring process transactional, right? So they make it so that, oh, I'm hiring this person because I got a bunch of stuff that needs to get done. And then, this and that. And then when I grow, then I'll do something different. And I'm like, why would you do something different? If you bring somebody into your business and you give them a career path to where they know that they have upward mobility, they know that the company's going in this direction and I get to be a part of it, they'll stay with you forever. The challenge is most people are hiring virtual assistants using transactional methods. They don't sit down in the very beginning, bring somebody in and say, okay, great. What are your career goals in a year? Where do you see yourself in 5 years? Well, here's what we want to do in this company, and we would love to have you to be a part of it. Nobody sits down and does that with a virtual assistant because it's too transactional. It feels temporary. My method is different. I bring every single person in, and I assume that not only are they going to work with me for the next decade or 20 years, but they're also going to bring their family. And what's fascinating is that we have people, I think there's a guy, someone on our team, he has 8 family members who work in our company. And so it's like, so if you imagine the impact that you can create in that, but not only that, do you think that if there's 8 of them, you think that they're considering this to be transactional? No, they put their livelihood inside my business. Like they believe in what we're doing so much that they keep bringing more and more of their family to be involved. And that is a really good sign that what you're doing is right. So I would say, instead of, well, what are the quality things that you're looking for? The same things you look for anywhere else, right? It's going to be, somebody's, what's their mentality like, right? How's their, do they have good integrity? Are they hardworking? Are they a quick learner? Do they have a great skill set for what you need? All of those kind of basic things. But then the easier thing is don't look at it as a transactional thing and invest in them in the beginning. Because if you invest in the beginning, you barely have to invest in the long run, because they will cycle that over and over. Our team, we train them once and then they train everybody else. And so like my investment in the very beginning to build a few people has turned into thousands. And all I did is I just trained a few people. And then that built this organization.
I love that. And it's that compounding effect in an investment. Like Warren Buffett talks about it. All the greats talk about it. You're talking about it in an actual, like if you invest in a person, look, you invested in one person, you brought 8 of his family members or 8 of their family members to your organization, which one makes it a lot easier for you to hire them, because you're like, hey, if they're putting their family into this, they're putting their reputation on the line, their family's going to live up to it, because honor and family is so important to other communities out there in those places. And heck, you're changing generations. Like your legacy is changing generations, because not only are you helping those 8 people in that family, you're creating a steady income where they can invest in themselves to go to the next stage, because they have a career, they have a company that could be around for the next 20, 30, 40 years.
Absolutely. Yeah. There's no reason that we couldn't.
And speaking of the future of your company, I would love to know, where do you see Virtual 9 in like 10 years? But where do you see Joe Rare? Like, where is Joe Rare in 10 years?
I mean, Level 9 Virtual is we morph. So it's funny. Level 9 Virtual has pivoted over and over as the market has changed. Right now, the competitive landscape in the outsourcing and in that world is really, really high, and it's growing. And so we do a few things to combat that. We continue to innovate. We continue to do things different. When we watch competition kind of doing exactly what we've been doing for the past decade, we just turn and do something a little more innovative and improve and do things, different, so that we create more value. the company is going to continue to grow. The company is going to continue to hire people in the Philippines and South America. Our mission is to create an impact into the lives of many. And that's both on the client side, where we help businesses by creating leverage, creating freedom, giving them the opportunity to buy back their time, as Dan Martell's book says. But then also the impact into the lives of all of the virtual assistants we employ. And, when you can hire one and impact 10, right, it's pretty powerful. And so every single thing that we do has such a magnitude of impact that it's almost unfathomable. So the company's going to continue to do what we do. I am just going to continue to step back and put more people in more roles that are executive level. There's the cool part is that I don't actually have to operate the company, right? The VAs do it. So that's kind of my claim to fame, is that all of my companies are run by virtual assistants, which seems, radical.
Mhm.
But they literally run the show. So everything from financing to HR to operations to sales to everything, I outsource everything. And so my entire company is run by people who are nowhere near me, and they completely operate the company and they continue to grow it. And, the best part is that when I get down in the weeds and I get busy with it, the company flatlines. When I step back and I let everybody do their thing and I advise from 30,000 feet, the company grows. And so the more that I stay out of the daily and I don't get involved in operations, the systems that have been built, they run really well. And so I'll just continue to invest in real estate. I'll continue to run these, companies from a distance, and that's it.
I love that. Just to enjoy the freedom that having companies that pretty much walk and talk do by themselves. With all this free time, obviously, you now have this exponential chance to invest in yourself and take yourself to the next level. What are the things that you do to help invest in yourself, to upgrade your skills, to become the best version of yourself?
Most of it's around being a father, actually. I'm always going to be interested in business and read and learn and continue to improve and take courses. I do all that stuff. I probably spend I do spend an obnoxious amount of money on training and courses and, and all that stuff. But most importantly is how can I be a better husband? How can I be a better dad? How can I, instead of focusing on how do I make Joe better, how do I make myself better for them? And that's where more of the attention is. And so every day when I, write in a journal, and it's I'm always focused on well, who am I to them? What do they see? What do they get to experience? One of the things that I'm most proud of is that I never miss anything. I am at every game. I'm at every, event at school or whatever they're doing. I don't miss a single thing. And that is the greatest thing, because I would never want to. And I want them to remember, dad's always here. Behind that door, there's two little girls in there, and they know that if they needed something, they could walk in the door. They'd interrupt your podcast. And, but that's the deal. So, that's the kind of, that's who I want to be. It's all about who I want to be for them more than anything else.
I love that. That's a great answer, and very different than some of the other answers that I've gotten from that. So I thank you very much for that.
Well,
and I appreciate it.
I think perspective shifts. Perspective gives you something that it's it sucks. The hustle, the grind, the early days of starting a business is tough, right? You're going to make sacrifices. And so the one thing that I would tell people is to, you can leverage my model if you want, is to find a model that doesn't sacrifice the things that are going to be the most important at the end of the day. There's never been an old man laying in a hospital bed about to die who looks back and goes, man, I wish I would have put in more hours. I wish I would have worked, that business a little harder, or I wish I would have started something. They're never going to say that. They're going to say, I wish I had one more minute with my family, right? I wish I could have been there for one more thing for my kids. That's all they care about. So when you're building anything, I think always put it in perspective that at the end of the day, nobody's going to give a crap about your business. That will not be the thing that anybody remembers. They're only going to remember whether you were there. And so if you're not there, that business ain't worth it.
heavy. I love it because it really does testament to the investing in yourself so it can be the best version of yourself for the people that you care about. Speaking of that, I have your 10-year-old self here. And I would love to know what advice you would love to hand back to your 10-year-old self.
Most things won't matter. Like everything that you're frustrated about right now, everything that's so tough. So a really good way to probably phrase this to a child would be, okay, I know you're upset. Calm down. In 2 days, you'll forget this moment even existed. So if you won't remember it in 2 days, how important is it right now? And the reality is it's kind of the concept that this too shall pass, right? Which is something that it's kind of random that this kind of popped up in this conversation, because that phrase I've written in, my journal that I write in every day. I've written that 4 or 5 times in the past few days. And it's kind of interesting because it's like if something like things pop up, right? Like we've been traveling. So like we're at our house in California right now, and we live in Montana, and there's all this stuff going on in Montana, right? Like we have chickens and animals and all this stuff. We have to have people watch them, and it's a nightmare. And like all these things are just going wrong because it snowed, 3 or 4 days ago. It's going to snow again tonight. And so I know it's almost June. We know. I'm
in Canada. I'm like, this is not normal.
Yeah. So like recognizing all that stuff and like how stressful it is to like deal with that. And it's like, you got to take care of the animals. You got to do this and you got to get them inside. And somebody's like, well, I've never really dealt with this before. And it's like, well, we're paying you to do it. And, and it's like, oh, guess what? Tomorrow it's going to be what it's going to be. So like this too shall pass. And I think that if I could tell my 10-year-old self that it's going to be okay. You're going to forget about it tomorrow. It's not going to even matter in 15 minutes. So if most things that kids give so much energy to, they literally don't matter, but they don't know they don't matter. And I think if I could give myself a piece of advice, it would be literally to understand that most things don't matter. Okay. And I think that's a good piece of advice for adults too.
Oh yeah. It's
in all of life, almost nothing that you think is important actually is important. There's almost nothing.
It's just family and the ones that you love that are the most important. That's
it. Yeah.
Joe, on that amazing note, I'm going to jump off screen here. I want you to let my audience know where they can connect with you so that they can learn more about Level 9 Virtual, or even maybe learn more from you as an individual, as a dad, to be a better father or a better parent. The floor, sir, is yours.
Yeah. So level9virtual.com. It's right there on the screen. In the top right corner, there's a book a call button. You can speak with my team if you want to learn about virtual assistant services. There's videos on almost every page of our website, so you can check those out. If there's anything that you need, you can also reach out directly to me, joe@level9virtual.com. Pretty easy.
Excellent. Joe, I want to thank you so much. I appreciate you taking the time to be on the show while you're in the midst of moving in your very cozy mudroom.
Yeah. No, so we're not moving. This is just, we're just traveling. We're visiting.
Oh, you're just traveling.
Yeah, because our family, we have so many graduations for like nephews and nieces and stuff. So we decided to make a full like 2-week trip out of it. And so we have our house here in California, and then we live in Montana. And so we stay here when we're in town, and it's good, except for the fact that I'm in the office mudroom, laundry room.
Showing that a space is multifunctional.
That's right.
I thank you again for being here.
Yeah, my pleasure.
I appreciate your time. To my audience, make sure you check out the show notes down below to connect with Joe, because you really do want to outsource and free up some time like Joe has, and maybe be able to travel whenever you want and not be stuck in one place in Montana's snow in nearly June. I still don't understand it, but I appreciate you all for listening, and remember to always invest in yourself.